It's November the 6th, 2024, and you know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I'm Jarisar, a WoW esports aficionado.
Hey guys, it's Big Moran. I'm the #1 Beast Mastery Hunter and now Holy Paladin hater. And today we're joined by Rank 1 Mage Aegis, who, plays Mage really well, has a YouTube channel that's doing pretty well, and has a Twitch stream that's always popping off. But Aegis, why don't you tell the audience about yourself?
I appreciate the kind words about the channels, but yeah, my name is Ian. I've been passionate about WoW for as long as I can remember. I first started playing like way back in Classic. Granted, I didn't know exactly what was going on. I was playing my brother's account or whatever, but started PvP around Warlords of Draenor. Kind of played on and off like due to school and stuff. Came back in Shadowlands. That's when I really started trying to actually improve at the game rather than just sort of playing it with my friends and stuff. Ended up getting rank 1. I've gotten rank 1 every season since that, and nowadays mainly focusing purely on content, trying to help newer players get into Mage and WoW in general, and just trying to create as best content as I can. So thank you for having me on here.
Oh, our
Yeah.
pleasure. Yeah.
Well, I noticed, speaking of your YouTube channel, that some of your oldest videos were from Warlords of Draenor, and you're actually playing Fire at the time, which, I mean, I think Frost was the more meta spec, but
Frost
I mean,
was
Fire...
one. Yeah, sorry.
Fire, I don't remember Fire much in WoD. Was it good?
Fire was really bad in WoD. It was I think a lot of the rank 1 mages might recall to Fire Mage and WoD being the worst Fire was, maybe. But I was heavily inspired by Hansel's YouTube videos in MOP, and the whole shtick of him kind of being like the rank 1 Fire Mage, just one trick. Like, I always thought that was kind of cool. So I just kind of adopted that for my own sake and only played Fire. And I definitely don't regret it. It was a lot of fun. I actually thought Fire is a lot better in WoD than most people gave it credit for. It was a playstyle that I super enjoyed.
Was WoD the expansion where you could summon the crystal and damage into it and it'd explode, or is that Legion? I don't remember.
So Prismatic Crystal was introduced in Warlords, but it never started being played until Season 3 because they introduced a new glyph or buffed a glyph called Glyph of Dragon's Breath, to where DB actually did a lot of damage. So Fire Mages in Season 3 would start, drop the crystal, you would DB it, then you would cold snap your DB back, and then double breath the crystal, and it would almost one-shot someone.
That was like the weirdest iteration of like that was such a weird thing looking back on it.
Yeah.
Garrett, sorry, you would literally summon a crystal.
Yeah. This sounds, I remember this actually. You guys are talking about this, and I'm having like PTSD flashbacks. So,
and the mage would attack it. Like, you'd
Yeah.
have to attack the crystal, and then it would explode for like how much damage you did or something. Like something weird. But yeah, it was such a weird playstyle.
It was actually really it was like only OP because whenever you would put the crystal down, the target would not only take damage from the DB, but from the duplication of damage from the crystal. So it's kind of like you were like double hitting them almost. It was definitely clunky, but it was really fun.
Fun for you. I can't imagine, like, there's no way to dodge that or like mitigate that, right? Like, you're just eating damage. That doesn't sound
Well,
like fun.
in a context where you're playing something like Rogue Mage, yeah, no, there's not.
Yeah.
But outside of Rogue Mage, I mean, this is like the story of Mage, like almost always is, at least nowadays. If you don't have a target like locking it down for the Mage, then it's not as lethal. Because I mean, Crystal by itself, people can walk out of it, whatever.
Yeah.
You put a kidney shot on top of it, it's a different story.
Fair enough. Yeah. Once again, Rogue Mage, OP since the beginning. I just want to bring...
I wish it was different.
There's one thing that I love is the fact, and like you said, you're doing content, you're trying to help out new players and everything. And we're talking about this just before the show. We're talking about how there's not a lot, like the game itself doesn't provide a lot of information. Like, a lot of the information on how to play World of Warcraft well, and to really approach the skill ceiling of your classes and the game is through community and that. And I just want to commend you because you help, like, you offer coaching, obviously, there's probably some sort of transactional there. It's not a free service, but how do you find that? Do you find that players who have gone through and with your coaching, the level of or the growth of that character or that person, how would you rate that?
It definitely depends on the individual. Like as a coach, I can lead someone, to water, but I can't force them to drink, kind of saying. But also to the coaching, it is like VOD review only, so
Okay.
not playing with them, which is what makes it actually, viable, not against terms of service or whatever. But when it comes to like how the player receives that coaching is something I've had to kind of really think about, because if I take a person who's brand new to WoW and I start coaching and saying, okay, so you see here the druid ironbarked, and that means that you shouldn't have popped your cooldowns into that. It's almost like you can't even go about it in that direction. It's like, okay, this guy doesn't even know what ironbark is
Hmm.
or barkscene is.
Yeah.
So
Or where to look to even
that's
see it.
been like it's been a
Sorry.
big uh it's been a big thing for me to try to learn how to coach that kind of player, because with the War Within releasing, that's been the primary person that has reached out to me is the brand new player.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, no, it's cool, and I've I've had a lot of people who have reached back out to me and told me that they have definitely found themselves more comfortable with the game and enjoying the game more. And it's not even only gameplay stuff, I would say. It's like
Mm.
the way they're viewing the game has changed as well. Um, I always try to emphasize that.
Yeah, one thing I truly believe after doing skill cap stuff for ages now is that it's sort of more important to learn the game than it is to learn your spec. I think like once you kind of understand how PvP works in like a fundamental level, like you can just kind of plug and play parts of every single spec into that equation, you know?
Yeah,
Like, and I think that's a really hard thing for people to understand. Like they want to learn their class. I get it. Like it makes total sense. Like they want to know all the little tricks, all the little interactions. But it's sort of like the fundamentals are like go way above that, and that's I think the thing people should be focusing on. Because like once you learn the fundamentals, like everything else kind of falls into place. At least in my experience.
I'd have to agree, because there have been classes I've picked up in the War Within, and I, I mean, granted, I do know a lot about every class. I don't know all the tips and little micro interactions you can do with every class. But I find that with strong fundamentals, you can almost log on any class and learn what those synergies are a lot quicker than if you were lacking, just the basic knowledge of kind of how damage rotations work, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, then. So that was a great podcast. We'll be right back to talk about fundamentals of World of Warcraft. I'm kidding. Uh, I understand what you guys are saying, and I definitely think that I think we've even done episodes about trying to look at maps at arenas and that, and think about positioning and that kind of stuff, even to try to like, get some of that evergreen content as well. Uh, I think it kind of goes hand in hand though. I think you have to understand the fundamentals, the CC chains and positioning, and that stuff is as important as being able to at least do your core rotation and be able to put out the damage or and how to or CCs and that and just be able to know what those buttons are. So I think you need to do both. I think but I get what you're saying is like what you're saying, Big, is you can't play chess only knowing how to play the rook or only know how to play the knight. Like you have to know
Yeah, oh,
the rest.
that's a good analogy. So like I'm gonna steal that.
Mm.
I charge $50 an idea, just to let you know.
$50 an idea. That's steep.
Okay, all right. One Mountain Dew mount. All right. On that, let's get into Need, Greed, and Pass, though. We'll do the icebreaker, and we'll start talking about the things that we know that are coming up in PvP events. But first, Need, Greed, Pass.
This likely won't be a clean fight, so keep your distance, eh?
Yes. So let's kick an instance and talk about the scenario this episode, along with the three options, and which one we will need, which one we'll greed, and which one we'll pass on. And this leads back to the announcement that we have a new Plunderstorm coming here shortly. And I heard that they're going to go, it sounds like they're going to go back to like an Arathi Basin style. And I was thinking, like, what if they actually did a different map? So the scenario is what should be the next map for Plunderstorm? Should it be Hala out there in the Outlands? Should it be Tol Barad? And I'm talking about the world PvP zone that opened up only on this, not the one that had all the quests in it, but the one that we did the actual PvP in. And Talador, which was and that one I was thinking, like, if you remember Talador, up in the corner there was Fort Rin, which was a tower, and then there was a spot called Vol'jin's Pride, and they were like right next to the two little towns next door to each other. So I was seeing that kind of an area. So if you know what I'm talking about, which ones do you think should be the next? Which one you need? Which one would you greed, and which one would you pass on? I'm gonna throw it to Big first. I feel like Moran's gonna hop all over this.
I'm a sucker for Nagrand. That's probably one of my favorite zones of all time in WoW. So I'm gonna need on Hala. I don't know how you say that, but
Pretty sure it's a lot.
I'm gonna greed on Talador for the sole reason that I do not like Tolbarad.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of the aesthetics. And I mean, I haven't played Cataclysm in a while, but man, how many times I spam Tolbarad for honor grinding. I'm not really a big fan of any place that gives me those memories, you know. So that's gonna be my options. I'll need on Hala, I'll greed on Talador, and then I'll pass on Tolbarad.
all right. I like it. How about you there, Aegis?
Not to repeat, but Nagrand definitely my need as well. I think Nagrand is so aesthetically pleasing to look at, whereas I feel like the other two, I think the other one was it was Tolbarad, and what was the other
Talador.
one there? Talador, which I believe is that a Legion zone? I don't even know what Talador looks like.
I think it was Warlords.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. That area was that area is also aesthetically pleasing, but that one would probably have to be my greed because the colors are also kind of aesthetically pleasing to me. It kind of reminds me of Nagrand almost, but Nagrand is so iconic that I feel like that would fit really well in Plunder. And then yeah, Tolbarad, I think it's just like, for me, it's, like I said, it's the color thing. It isn't kind of gloomy, if I remember correctly. So I'd have to pass on that one.
Interesting. I find interesting you guys. It's about the aesthetics more than, because I personally I was going to need on Tolbarad because I felt it was a great zone. You had obviously it's already walled and that, so it works with that whole creeping wall idea.
True. Yeah.
And you had like the different towers and the places to hide and everything all the way up till you get to the center area. So I thought that was, that's kind of what I was going to go for. And I was going to, this was a hard one between Talador and Hala. I actually am going to greed on Talador only because as much as I love Nagrand and that whole aesthetic, just like the same, I feel like there's a certain point there where you get to the bridge area before you get to the center of Hala, where it's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be actually great gameplay for something like Plunderstorm. I feel like everybody would just get funneled into these few spots and just become a death chain, depending on the people who are lucky enough to get the.
But yeah, definitely in Plunderstorm, dying to like elevation is never fun. Like,
no, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine like getting that far? Finally make it to the island and get knocked off and die.
And then the storm just eats you up. Yeah, no,
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But so that's what I was gonna. I'll agree on Teledor and pass on Hala only for that reason. I'll I almost feel like in order for Hala to work properly, they would have to have like a gust back where if you get knocked off of the bridge or off the island, you'd have to get blown back up. Obviously, like if you get knocked into the storm, you're probably going to die anyways, but I feel like that would be needed or something. But anyway, so that's the Need, Greed, and Pass. To those listening live, by all means, tell us what you think in chat. And for those listening at home, come out to our Discord or over to Twitter or any of their fun places and tell us what you think would be your preferred Need, Greed, and Pass. In the meantime, we are going to get into the upcoming PvP events that we know of.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
Apparently, I'm having a hard time talking. So upcoming PvP events. So the Mythic Dungeon International is in full swing with Group B happening this coming weekend. The Group China is going to be happening at an unknown time. I think, if I remember correctly, their time trial just ended, so they should be happening sometime soon. The big thing that I know I'm waiting for with bated breath is the AWC Gauntlet and the Grand Finals on the 15th to the 17th of November. Yes, for the esports, but more so, I'm expecting we're going to see some tuning finally after that? Question mark. What do you guys think?
Hopefully, man. I'm tired of the BM hunters.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so from my memory, earlier in the expansion when there was the MDI, there was a pause on tuning. Like a 2-week pause. So I don't know, we'll see. We'll know by the end of this week, right? Like it's usually Friday they post the notes. Sometimes like Friday in the afternoon, typically.
Yeah.
Sometimes Thursday.
Yeah,
So we'll
it's
know
more
either
Thursday
today
to
or
aim for, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, clearly they can do just PvP tuning. Like
Yep.
they have those knobs, right? The infamous knobs they can turn. But yeah, like I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer, but I think healer balance specifically is really, really bad right now. Or I mean, just right now the biggest problem is that you have just a few specs that are just like overperforming in every single category, like melee, ranged, and healer. Like you just have some clear standouts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would expect maybe some BM Hunter nerfs and I don't know, Feral maybe.
I've always thought about like, what if they just stopped nerfing things and just started buffing things that were not good? Like, do you think that would be? Is there an angle I'm seeing on why that's not just a good thing to do?
I don't know. I mean, I think in principle I agree that buffing is better than nerfing. But I think it's like sort of a public perception move to nerf, like people really don't like BM hunters, right? And they have these very strong attitudes towards BM hunters. And so in some ways they don't want necessarily themselves to get buffed. They'd rather have the BM hunters to get nerfed. I think it's some like weird little psychological game that the devs have to deal with. But I mean, I agree that like in principle, like buffing is better than nerfing.
It never feels good to get nerfed.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel though that if you buff everything you end up with a massive amount of power creep, and eventually then every season you would have to probably reset all the buffs and everything, especially once new tier sets and everything else, and it'll all have to get redone. Whereas I feel like the ups and downs, it kind of works out better that way, especially if there's an ability that is clearly an outlier and doing way too much damage, that one ability should be moved down, so then you aren't just getting one shot at completely by just this one ability. So that needs a nerf versus, I don't know if you would be able to counter that one ability by, let's say, buffing all the healers so they can counter that one ability. Because then if you do all that, now healers are super overpowered cross board, especially in all the other versions of PvP, not just 3s or 2s, right? Because if you think about RPGs, if you do that now, you have 2 to 3 healers that are now like super overpowered versus, you know. So
It's a good point.
I think you have to
Yeah,
have that balancing both ways.
including all the different types of brackets is definitely a headache because it's.
Yep.
I mean, they're like they've nerfed Mistweavers a couple times in these last
Mm-hmm.
patches, but Mistweavers are kind of not really good in arenas.
Yeah.
So those nerfs have solely been just to make them a little bit weaker in battlegrounds. So
Yep.
then it's like, you know, how do you tackle that correctly? It's almost impossible, it feels like.
No, you're not wrong, and I don't envy the devs for how they have to be able to manage that, because and it goes again to perception as well, because there's people like, oh, look at this, it's so broken. Well, it's only broken if you're doing this, you know, playing threes with this one specific comp. Otherwise, it's not actually broken. But when everybody does that same thing, then, you know, perception.
I think it's a real big problem. I think the problem that we've experienced now for like the third time in a row is when Blizzard buffs these easy to play specs.
Mm-hmm.
Then you run into sort of like these issues where like it's fine. Like, in some respect, I don't really care if Feral's that broken because I think Feral's a bit more challenging to play. I mean, so it's like, you know, if people re-roll it, they're not instantly going to be sort of, you know, S tier
Yeah.
on it. But like if you have like a BM hunt, like a spec like BM Hunter, be S tier, then it's going to be very oppressive because everyone can just re-roll and instantly be good.
And you're not. I was actually going to get to that. Is you're not wrong. There's that whole, you know, if you have a 5-button class versus a 3-button class, and both of them can do the same level of damage, which one are people going to play, and which one's going to feel more oppressive, right? Because the 5-button, if a class has to push 5 buttons in a specific rotation in order to be able to do a bunch of damage and kill somebody, it's easier to lock that down or interrupt that to stop that from happening. Versus a 3-button class doing the same thing, it's harder, right? Because, you know, after 3 abilities, your friend disappears, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not easy. Speaking of also not easy is trying to get people to sign up to our damn shuffle game. I say this nicely, seriously. 23rd of November, we are hosting a PvP shuffle game. So go sign up at Matcherino. Links are in our Discord, on Twitter. Go sign up. And if you're not going to sign up, go watch us and, you know, try to cast a bunch of shuffle games. That'll be fun. And if you want, you can throw some money into the prize pool and help support the people that are playing. All right, subject of analysis. Let us pick Agus's brain here on Frost Mage and figure out how we play one or kill one.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
All right. Yes, because that's always the end state, right? Is either you're playing one and you're winning, or you're playing against one and you're wanting to kill one. So, Agus, Frost Mages. I guess first and foremost, I mean, well, Big, you said it. Frost Mages have always been kind of this PvP meta spec. Like, I remember for ages, if you're gonna play a mage in PvP, you better be playing a Frost Mage pretty much. There's some times where it was like Arcane, or sometimes it was Fire, but pretty much it's always been PvP equals Frost Mage. So I'm just kind of curious, like, has Frost Mages seem to be all of a sudden really popular? And before the show, you're talking like there's a whole bunch of balancing. They've been changed a few times. Kind of, what's the walkthrough here? What started from the beginning of War Within to where we are now, and why are we seeing so many Frost Mages?
I think a big thing that started the, I don't know if you want to call it the epidemic of Frost Mages, I wouldn't say anymore, but at the start of the War Within it was the particular build that was being played was the instant cast build. So it made it kind of felt like a BM Hunter in a way, where it was like your damage was just Ice Lance, and you would get so many Ice Lance procs. There were so many ways to generate it. It felt like you were kind of face rolling. And Mage doesn't always have a build that kind of feels like that. In comparison, like now, pretty much every Mage spec except Fire has to cast. So quickly that's been, it's gone now. But I think people really enjoyed just being able to do damage instant cast, not have to deal with fishing for precog or trying to think about where they're standing to line of sight interrupts and stuff. So overall, way easier to play. I think people like Mage, but are maybe intimidated by the difficulty of it, or the perceived difficulty of it. So it having a build that was pretty accessible to most players probably sparked the big influx of Frost Mages. I think people also really enjoy having 2 ice blocks compared to the other specs.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that part helps.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, like Frost Mage damage is just, at least at the beginning of expansion, was just so like miles ahead of Fire Mage damage. Like Fire Mage damage is, Fire has that kind of that fun, I don't know, like cadence of, you press your 2 Phoenix Flames or whatever, then you Fireball, Pyro, double fire. Like it has that fun little gameplay loop, but it was like doing 0 damage, right? And like you could do that entire gameplay loop and do like less damage than like 2 Ice Lances or something.
It's still that way. To be fair,
It's pretty crazy. And then I mean, Arcane has been buffed a few times. I think Arcane is in a pretty good place right now, right?
yeah, Arcane. I do believe it does good damage. To me, it's the more annoying of the 3 to play because it solely revolves around one button, which is Touch of the Magi. So it sort of feels like in your downtime, you are trying to build procs, make sure the target has no buffs, position in a way where you can cast, and then once you can press Magi, you're gonna do so much damage during it for like 10 seconds. And then after that, it's back to just being useless a little bit and setting up your next Magi. So it's kind of like a 45-second go base class, which it is fun, when it works, but it can be frustrating if those goes are getting stopped potentially, and then also like the feeling of that downtime doesn't really feel like you're playing the game the whole game. Whereas on the other specs, it's kind of like I'm always able to do damage. But it is
Yeah.
in a good spot, especially when you play with classes that can lock down the targets you're trying to kill and enable you to burst. Yeah, the damage is insane.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a thing with the meta right now. Like casters, I would argue are better, at least in solo shuffle and probably in 3v3 too. Like a lot of caster specs have been really broken at different times throughout this expansion so far. But obviously the problem is you need to cast sometimes, and so right now if you can just have a melee lock down a target for you, like you are overpowered. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. It was super eye opening to me. It was like watching the AWC on EU and just seeing how much damage like an Affliction Warlock can do if it has a sub rogue on its team. Like you just, if someone is cheap shot, you can 100-0 them as an Affliction Warlock, and it's kind of, I mean, maybe you can't 100-0 as on a Frost Mage, but it definitely helps when someone's getting locked down, right? But one thing I was curious about, because I kind of tuned out at the end of Dragonflight. How has Frost Mage changed since specifically like the end of Dragonflight?
It's a good question. In Dragonflight, you had multiple different sources of damage, and it wasn't necessarily like your damage was tied to cooldowns. It was just abilities that had sort of smaller cooldowns. So, nothing really on the mage kit side of things has changed. It's pretty much just purely damage has changed. Before in Dragonflight, you were killing people with frost bombs, which is essentially a bomb you put on the target. After 5 seconds, it explodes. You would try to shatter it, and it would like do about 40% of someone's life if it crit. You had Ray of Frost, which was a giant beam of death. That ability could actually 100-0. These abilities in the War Within aren't tuned to the point where they can do that. And then Glacial Spike is the biggest one. Glacial Spike, your tier set, I believe, affected Glacial Spike. And the tuning on the ability was simply higher for, I guess, the health pools or whatever, however that works. Nowadays, Glacial Spike is not played, Frostbomb is not played, Ray of Frost is not played.
Yeah.
Initially, when the War Within came out, it was all Ice Lance. That's received, I think, 2, 3, maybe even 4 nerfs at this point to bring it down. I mean, Ice Lance can still peak at about 800,000 in a 6 million health pool, which is decent for how many you can get. But the main source of damage now on Frost Mage is Frostbolt again, but since we're playing the Frost Fire tree, it's Frost Firebolt. So Frost Mage always kind of bounces between a couple different specs. It's either the Ice Lance build, the Glacial build with some fun accessories like Ray and Frostbomb, or it's a Frostbolt class. Right now it's a Frostbolt class. So it's kind of, we've seen Frostbolt build before. That's what we're doing now. You pop Icy Veins, you stack modifiers on Frostbolt. There are so many. You have Slick Ice, Death Chill, I think it's called Glacial Advance or something. And you just spam them. The more you spam, the more they do. So
Okay.
during Veins, literal just Frostbolt God. Outside of Veins, your damage is definitely really, I wouldn't say it's very strong. But it is kind of fun because of the Frostfire tree. It makes your Comet Storm, this is like the strongest Comet Storm I feel like has ever been, because it also calls down a meteor. So, during Veins, you're kind of a Frostbolt machine. And then outside of Veins, you're kind of more like trying to play a little bit more strategic. Maybe use your utility spells, Snowdrift, Ice Wall, try to win the game with those. And that for me, that's very fun because I like when games are decided by control rather than just by pure damage, which is always a fun time.
Yeah.
With Frost Mage.
I think we all enjoy that kind of a game, like where it's not just PvE damage, but where you have all these neat little tricks, like, depending if you do a vortex at the right time, or if you put down an ice wall at the right time, or if you're able to,
it's pure dopamine.
Yeah, it is. So I guess you kind of spoke there. I'm curious, how do you track all those modifiers? Like, because I know, like, when I'm playing and that bar just starts, like, I can't even pay attention to it. Like, there's just like, I have like 18 different modifiers and buffs showing up on like, it's just, it's noise to me. It's so much. How do you track all that to know it's like, when I push this bolt, it is going to do something massive? Or is it just like you push it, you're like, holy crap, it did a bunch massive?
Luckily, I think on Frost Mage it differs from some classes because a lot of them are tied into the same functionality. So, for example, you have a lot of different modifiers that affect Frostbolt, but they all are proccing in the same way, and that's just by casting more of them. So I don't even track half of the modifiers. I think a lot of the things that are happening in the background, there's no need to track them because it's like if you press Frostbolt, the next one will do a lot more damage.
Okay.
So I think it kind of helps to minimize that when it comes to screen clutter. I know a lot of people like to track every little ounce of modifiers on their screen and stuff, and some of them are justified. Like there's one, for example, for Frost Mage called Severe Temperatures. Every time you don't press Frostbolt and use another spell, the damage of your next one is higher. That one's important to track because maybe outside of Veins, that thing is stacking up, and now you know that your next instant one is going to be a lot more damage. But yeah, like I said, the Frostbolt ones, when Veins is active, every time you cast a bolt, it does more. No need to really track those, although I don't think every class is like that. So that's just kind of a luxury, I guess, you have on Frost Mage.
That you are lucky then, I will say.
Yeah, don't have to track everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, I think like the amount of buff, like we used to have button bloat, now we have buff bloat. Like it's just.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And
I've been using better Blizz plates. It's this fancy add-on where you can remove certain buffs and debuffs from showing on the frame. So I've been trying over time to just find all these little ones that are basically just taking up room on your screen for no reason. But man, there's so many. It's like I can't even.
I've also heard
buy
that
'em
it's
all.
quite CPU intensive to filter out, but like if you're like in a big
Oh, really?
environment, it might lag you or something. Because like checking every player's buffs or something, but
That's a good point. Yeah.
yeah,
Never thought
buff
about
bloat.
that.
Right now, it's funny if you log into your character, you have 5 buffs just by default. Like they're just automatically there. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
One is just
Um,
because of the anniversary.
yeah.
Or-
Going back to the different mage builds, is there one? So we have like the Ice Lance build, we have Frostbolt build, which has some Ice Lance stuff too, and then we have sort of the bloated build with all the fun little abilities, Glacial Ray. Is there one particular build that you like the most? Like, is there one you prefer?
Mm-hmm. It's not Frostbolt. Yeah, the build that we ran in Dragonflight to me is the most enjoyable. With Glacial and Ray, because with this build, it's like every time you have a Glacial, you can kill someone. It's not like, oh, I just used Icy Veins and I spammed a million Frostbolts. Now I have to wait till next Icy Veins to really have any kill pressure. I really enjoy Glacial because it gives you kill pressure whenever you have one. Not like waiting for a cooldown. The ones with Veins will do more damage, but the ones without still do a lot. And then, you combine that with like a Frost Bomb on them. They hit at the same time. It's a lot of damage. And I think it's very fun because these abilities aren't necessarily easy to get off. Frost Bomb's easily dispellable.
Mhm.
So it was kind of a fun mini game to, maybe sheep the off target and apply a Frost Bomb to the kill target. So you're kind of putting this healer in a predicament. Do I want to dispel the full sheep on my other guy? Do I want to spell the Frost Bomb? To me, little decisions like that are fun. Frostbolt spam, while it is good, uh, it's like the most damage I think Mage has put out recently, but it's a little one-dimensional, I'd say, for me. And then same with the Ice Lance build. I think it's also a little too dumbed down a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I mean personally, if I because I used to play mage, I think
Mhm.
I would like the Frostbomb, or I'm sorry, the Frostbolt build the most, just because it sort of aligns with what I enjoy. Like it reminds me of sort of the older expansions where you have a bit of a mix of damage between casted and instant spells. I think it's really cool when Icy Veins feels really powerful. You know, when you get that feeling that, oh, Veins is coming up, I can I can AoE the entire team down with like the AoE Frostbolts. I like that, even though I know it can, it creates this weird predicament where it's like, well, you can only kill during Ice Lance and or during Icy Veins, and that it's kind of annoying. Um, but but speaking of the Frostbolt build, since it is currently the more ubiquitous one, what talent in particular defines, or what talents define the Frostbolt build? What are the hard locked ones if you want to play that build?
Yeah, you have, I would say, maybe 5. There's one called Slick Ice. I have the tooltip, I can just read it. While Icy Veins is active, every Frostbolt you cast reduces the cast time of Frostbolt by 4% and increases the damage by 4%, stacking up to 5 times. So after 5 Frostbolts, the cast time is greatly reduced. Gotta think that's also on top of the haste from Veins. So you are really just like, I don't know the exact number, but I think these Frostbolts come out to be somewhere around like 0.8 second casts. It's pretty quick. And they're doing more and more damage the more you cast. Then we have Fractured Frost. While Icy Veins is active, your Frostbolts hit 2 additional targets and increases the damage by 15%. This is what makes the Frostbolt build really strong, because this Fractured Frost makes your Frostbolt's AoE, which ties directly into the next talent, Death's Chill. When Veins is active, damaging an enemy with Frostbolt increases the damage by 1%, stacks up to 15 times. Sounds like that would be slightly slower to ramp up, but since your Frostbolts are AoE, every single Frostbolt stacks up that 3 times. So
Oh wow.
really only takes about 5 frost bolts if people are stacked to get to full damage. And then you have one more, I think, Deep Shatter, which increases the damage of Frostbolt against frozen targets by 25%. So that one is definitely very important to play. And then the last one, I mean, it's Icy Veins, which is a talent, I suppose. That one definitely plays a role.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
You're saying that, and I can't help but think that Mage would go well with like Frost DK, where the DK is able to grip everybody in, do a blinding sleep. They're all blinded, and then Mage Icy Veins, and just starts nuking. Like
That would be
cleave
a
would be
pretty
insane.
disgusting combo. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be insane. I think going back to what we said, like how comps are sort of thought of nowadays is like you have the strongest healer most of the time, and then you have the strongest melee most of the time, which ideally also has control. So recently that's been like Sub, Rogue, and Feral. And then you have like the OP caster role, which is the caster that pops off when the melee controls everyone. So it would be interesting to see a Frost DK with that. I think it's important nowadays to have like the mono strike effect. So I think the Frost DK doesn't quite have that, right?
No, I guess it
So
probably
you
have
would-
to be the unholy DK. 'Cause
Yeah, I mean, I think if you played the Frost Mage Frost DK, it would be like your win condition would just be those grip triple blinds.
yeah.
Could be interesting. It would sounds like fun content too.
Again,
That's
$50 or Mountain Dew mount.
That was actually a very popular comp at the very beginning of Cataclysm when Ring of Frost was instant.
Oh yeah.
That was fun.
Yes.
That's sick. That's sick.
It probably would have been with a Frost or a Fire Mage, right? Because Fire had the big AoE combustion.
I think it was with Frost because I don't remember how it worked, but Frost is just like the best in Cataclysm. I don't think Fire and Arcane were even playable. I think they were just kind of janky. I don't remember.
Fire's good, but it's
Oh yeah, Fire
unoriginal.
was good in Cataclysm, but I don't think it was
Yeah.
good at the very beginning of Cataclysm.
Oh yeah, when you have really low crit, it's very orange.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember playing a Frost Mage at the beginning of Kata. It was
Frost and Kata is one of my favorite designs, I think.
It was fun to play. It was
Big shatters.
Biggest shatters.
It was so. Oh my gosh. All right. Understanding. So you got the talents and everything. Just for especially for this Frostbolt build or the Frostfire bolt build. What PvP talents are you using? Like I think I've seen before where I've heard people, Snowdrift I've heard of often. Ring of Fire. You mentioned Ice Wall, which is also an ability. Are those like the 3 lock-ins, or is there other ones, and those are just like depending on what you're facing and your different different options?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the bracket and comp you're playing. Just like most classes, you're always changing. In my opinion, there's 2 lock-ins. There's Ring of Fire. I think Ring of Fire fits sort of the meta of WoW recently, where it's been, pad details damage, just try to do as much damage as possible. I think Ring of Fire really carries a lot of mage specs, which is kind of weird to think about, but it's what allows mage in most cases to stay up on the details and compete with other classes in terms of damage. That is if you're getting good value out of it, but that spell is very strong. I definitely don't think there's one that could replace it. So Ice Wall is another strong one. Now this is something that people I think are just now like playing Ice Wall. I think before playing Ice Wall was sort of like a meme. People were like, "You're playing Ice Wall? Like that's so troll." Or you're just it would be like a talent you would play kind of for fun. But we've been seeing mages running Ice Wall in AWC even. So it's like definitely a mainstream talent nowadays. And I think along with the Frostbolt build the reason this talent has become stronger is because an old counter to when Frostbolt build used to exist would be Mage popped Icy Veins, get out of dodge, line of sight, hit the pillar. Ice Wall kind of makes it to where you can sort of control people's positioning a little bit. You know,
Mhm.
you can put it on the edge of the pillar, and they can't really run away from you on your veins. I think it also is a good supplement in terms of control. Like you can do a lot of damage first, and then out of a CC on healer, it's more CC that isn't necessarily a DR. So it's also a win condition, can lead you to lots of kills.
Agreed.
The third talent is kind of up in the air. Some people play some different things based off of different matchups, or maybe they're doing battlegrounds or something. I would say the pick most players are going with right now is Snowdrift, because it gives Mage access to a stun, which is something that mages haven't had for as long as I can remember. And what Snowdrift really aids you in is outside of Icy Veins. Because during Icy Veins, you're kind of wanting to stay away from people so you can cast those Frostbolts. But since Frostbolt's not really doing too much outside of Veins, you sort of need a way to win the game outside of it as well. And having that stun is huge. All your damage into the Snowdrift gets shattered and does 10% more. It can end games, gives you something to do outside of Veins. I'd say
Sorry.
the only other contender here is probably Master Shepherd. For example, when you're playing with something that already has a lot of stuns, maybe a Rogue or Feral. Snowdrift, you know, the whole team's being stunned by your teammates anyways. Might as well play Master Shepherd and get that bonus versatility whenever you sheep a target, aka sheep, do more damage. It's not bad.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Snowdrift, that's a new one. What does it do? What's the talent, or what's the tooltip on that one again?
Yeah, Snowdrift is essentially you create an orb around you, like a blizzard around you, and then after 2 seconds, whoever's in it gets stunned for 4 seconds. So
Okay.
it has an arm timer. Now, the reason this ability is, I do like having a stun. I'm not gonna take it for granted. I'm a mage and I have a stun. I'm happy. The arm timer is definitely frustrating because there's a lot of counterplay to it. Any sort of freedom effect will reset the arm timer. If you're trying to stun a druid and he keeps shifting back and forth, it'll never tick. If you're trying to stun a paladin and he freedoms himself, it'll never tick. Just anything in that like kind of area. But it is strong still. So again, I won't take it for granted.
And it allows you to do the meteor setups or the Comet Storm setups.
It's best combined with Comet Storm, yeah, because Comet I think is more important to be landing nowadays more than ever due to Frostfire Tree making it also call down a meteor, and that meteor's been buffed recently. So you want to shatter all the ticks, and you don't want the target to move out of it. I think a lot of Frost Mages, at least from what I've seen in my coaching, is they don't value that ability as much as they should. That is your burst outside of Veins, at least.
Interesting. I like it.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. So, and like you're saying, the Snowdrift, the stun from Snowdrift, that DRs with other like rogue stuns and bash.
Yep.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what the other reason maybe a lot of players don't like Ice Wall or didn't like it initially is you literally have to keyboard turn, right? Or you have to have your turn character bound.
That is one method. I believe that to be the inferior method, because if you're casting an ice wall and you're turning it with your keyboard, it's a set pace in which it turns. So if you have a lot of haste and you cast an ice wall, it's like a 0.9 second cast. The turning of the keyboard is not going to be quick enough. You can also right click and use your mouse to
Oh, I didn't
angle
know
it,
that.
which is instant. You can instantly
Yeah,
put it in the position
that
you
makes
want.
way more sense.
Yeah. So that one's a bit better just because of sometimes that wall, Frost Mage has a lot of haste. I think a really strong talent on Frost Mage is when there's bussing, you receive 8% baseline haste, and you
What?
receive 10% more from any sources. And
That's
in
insane.
WoW, there's a haste cap at like 30%. The additional haste you gain from Winter's Blessing does not account to that. So Frost Mage, really OP with a lot of haste. Makes your wall with veins up very, very quick. The keyboard turning thing, I think, is too slow, especially if you have a lot of haste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's insane.
Sometimes that cast is almost instant, so
Yeah.
I will attest though, like Ice Wall is a game-winning play sometimes. Like, I mean,
it's
geez,
yeah.
I can't tell you how many solo shuffles I've just lost because someone just gets walled off, and then I can't kill it fast enough, and then it's if I don't have Trank up or something, it's like sometimes just GG. I mean, it's like Smoke Bomb kind of on steroids sometimes if you can get a good one.
It's
It's
funny you
pretty.
bring up Trank because there's actually this funny interaction with Ice Wall and Trank where you know how Tranquility is kind of like the Ardruid's immunity, right?
Yeah.
Um, if they're tranking and you put an Ice Wall down to where they're in the middle of it, it kind of moves them so you can cancel the trank a little earlier and still kill
Oh
them too.
no.
Yeah. But yeah, like you're saying, I've actually made this statement on stream before that Ice Wall is like your win condition almost half the time. It really feels like in some shuffle lobbies, just passively sitting back and PvEing and relying on like a blink counter spell is not enough most of the time. It feels like Ice Wall really is a majority of your win conditions in shuffle
I can
and in
see that.
threes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, especially like deep dampening. Like right now, solo shuffle games just kind of go a bit long. Like they kind of just like linger, if you know what you know what I'm saying. Like at the at the end, it'll be like 3 minutes in, and like the healers will be out of juice, but the game just doesn't end. But Ice Wall is a good way to guarantee the game ends because then it completely cuts off healing.
Even if you only wall off the person for 1 or 2 seconds, putting them behind in those 1 or 2 globals in that late of dampening sometimes does mean the kill as well.
Yep.
Well, let's not miss the point that also if you ice wall nichely and the person is completely solo, the other teammates can't do any CC or anything else to stop the go either, right? So they're completely cut off. Right?
Yeah.
It's not just locking out the healer. If you're able to completely isolate that one player and just nuke them, like
That reminds me of a kill I had on Tolvaron. You know how Tolvaron in the starting room,
yeah,
there's like a little, I guess like a little square that you
yeah.
walk out of. I had this warrior who was pretty low, and I kind of blinked into the room, and I was kind of low, and he charged me, and then I just walled him off. It was me and him in the starting room together. It was like a 1v1, and then he ended up
Well,
getting
little
taken out.
Makara, and he didn't live.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
It's a really really fun ability.
it is, and that's the thing, like because it can DPS to destroy it to get it out of the way, or it just crashes after so much time, right? But I mean, that still takes about a
Uh,
bit of damage to blow.
it lasts, yeah, it lasts 15 seconds, and it has a lot of health. So
Mm.
it is hard to kill. It's 40% of your max HP, which if we have like 6.5 million, it's multiple millions amount of HP. I think the
Yeah.
biggest counter to it is MD. You can MD it, mass dispel.
Ah, okay. That's probably why I've seen it disappear so quickly, and because I've seen it like go up and then drop almost immediately on AWC, and I thought it was just like,
You can cancel it too. Like sometimes when
oh, okay.
let's say you as the mage are trying to get a clutch ice wall
Hmm.
and you kind of fail, like it's not really a good wall. Most of the time you'll just instantly cancel it so you don't kind of screw over your own teammates
Makes sense.
if it's not actively helping you. You just re-click the bind.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you don't
Yeah.
need like a special macro to like cancel aura or something like
Nope.
that. Nice. Okay.
Just re-click the bind. Yeah. Nice and
Nice.
easy.
Easy. I mean, I wish I had other abilities like that. I was needed to learn. I almost need to get a coding class in order to write the macros to cancel auras and stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Just coming back to some of the different talents. You obviously Frostfire with you've been talking about that. I'm assuming that's the talent build we're talking is the Frostfire build versus Spellslinger.
Yeah, that would be correct.
All right. Why not Spellslinger? Just like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, "Hi, this looks really cool. What, do I have to do Frostfire?" Like, why not Spellslinger?
It's a good question because actually Spellslinger is the one that's played in PvE. So by following that line of logic, you're like, oh, well, if we're playing it in PvE, shouldn't that mean more damage? And in PvP, isn't more damage better? But the biggest weakness of Spellslinger is there is about 4 or 5 talents that are all directly tied to either Orb or Blizzard, which in PvP is not really a big source of your damage. It's more of a source of proccing Frostbite,
Yeah.
which is the little procced roots. And yeah, it's I think Frostfire in comparison has a lot more things that would be useful in a PvP context, whereas Spellslinger has some fun toys, but a majority of it is based around just simply getting more AoE damage with orbs and stuff, which in PvP doesn't super apply. And I mean, when you look at the Frostfire tree, I mean, some of these abilities are really crazy.
Is that also a matter of like single target versus multi-target? Like a lot of PvE stuff seems to be AoE, do mass damage multiple targets versus unless you're RBG or doing battleground blitz and you're in the scrum, like generally you're only looking at 2 maybe 3 targets at a time, right?
I mean, AoE damage is never necessarily a bad thing in PvP as well. In fact, I'd say it's better at this point because really the game is coming down to, or is always going to come down to who did more damage. But I think the spells that Spellslinger modifies are just low damaging spells in a PvP context. I think Orb has to be hitting, for example, in PvE, you're hitting a large pack of mobs, like
Yeah.
8 to 10 usually. Whereas Frostfire, it gives you instant Frostfire bolts, which are more single target damage, but it also gives you actually, yeah, you're right. Frostfire really comes down to just it's more single target damage, like more burst.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's also PvP modifiers that we're not even looking at for Orb and Blizzard and that. Like, but don't get
I'm
me wrong
actually
though.
not sure of the Orb
Okay.
modifier.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm just spitballing here, but
Mhm.
Blizzard, you still use that in PvP because it does that slow. Like it's a micro CC, if you will, right?
Yeah, Blizzard is actually strong in a AoE context. Not necessarily for the slow. The slow is a nice added bonus for sure, but it
Okay.
resets the cooldown on your orb per target that it hits. So commonly what you're doing is you're orbing. There's a talent that makes your next Blizzard free when you do that. So you would try to ideally put that on like a target, a bunch of different targets that are stacked. That's why
Yeah.
it's kind of nice into pet classes because it's like I'll put my
Yeah.
orb out, I put my Blizzard out. The Blizzard's hitting all these little pets and things, and it's farming it back pretty quickly, which is always nice.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And tier set, 2-piece, 4-piece, no piece.
It's also interesting because in PvE they run the 4-piece, but I actually remember testing the 4-piece on the, I believe it was the beta, because it sounded pretty good. If I remember correctly, it is whenever you use Fingers of Frost Ice Lances, it will do AoE damage, but yeah, the damage is way too low. I think it is stronger in PvE because of how many targets are stacked most of the time. The 2 set is definitely too good to pass up. It's just a flat increase on your lance damage. You definitely wouldn't want to play without that. That's just free damage. Any tier sets, I feel like when they're just simple, just this does more damage. That's most of the time you're gonna want that. This one, yeah, the 4-piece requires you to have to wear like crit mastery gear. Haste being as OP as it is on Frost, not really
Yeah,
worth it for that small increase.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I mean, I'm assuming with gearing, you just pretty much want as much haste and verse as you can. Do you ever try to play? I mean, have you ever tried to play like a mastery build or anything?
Uh, it's funny because people on stream all the time will always ask me like, maybe they won't be or maybe they'll be playing haste first and struggling a little bit, and players will always look for other options with mastery and stuff like that. But I always kind of rag on them a little bit because the talent is called Winner's Blessing, and it's like you've been given the blessing of infinite haste, and it's like all this haste that you have doesn't account towards the cap. So I think a lot of players forget that haste also affects your global cooldown as well. So
Yes.
mastery on Frost Mage, it does scale a little slower. For example, in Dragonflight Season 4, when there was a lot of secondary stats in the game, you could play around 50% haste and still have almost 40% mastery. And around 40% was when I actually started feeling a difference in it. But in this season, mastery is not too great because you need a lot of it to feel it. And the real selling point of mastery is the bottom line of the tooltip, where it increases the damage of Lance and Glacial. And since we're not really playing a build revolved around that, we don't really want too much mastery right now.
Haste
Okay.
is the feel good stat, and we like haste. It's just
Yes, yeah.
it's always gonna feel better.
Especially
to
on
have haste.
Mage, I think
What-
haste on Mage will always own.
Which is funny because Big, you always used to say how how do you used to say it? Like haste is the laziest stat.
No, I say it's like a feel. I always say it's like the feel good stat. Like you don't. I mean, it's a lazy stat in the sense that like if you're a caster, it's like it's always a pretty safe bet that you can just go haste.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always some exceptions to that rule, but it's like that's pretty standard. But like I mean, I don't know. For me, if I'm playing anything that has to cast spells, I want haste.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna feel better, makes the game feel a bit more responsive, and yeah, sometimes I think what the problem, the mistake people make, and I see this quite often with like resto druids, is like, oh, I want a bunch of mastery. Mastery is so good. Mastery makes my healing stronger. It's like, well, yes, it does on paper. Like, mastery is always going to be the highest weighted stat for throughput. But if you're sacrificing all of your haste for more mastery, it's just like, man, the game's not going to feel good. You're going to run into these problems, like haste makes it so you can apply your hots faster. It has all these like quality of life improvements baked into the stat that I think players sort of underlook. They just look at the damage like, oh, this does big damage. I want to take this stat. It's like, well, oh, wait a second. Let's think about the game, like actual gameplay here.
Yeah.
It's important to note too, like you used Ardred as an example. Is like Ardred is kind of I always like to refer to it as like a global intensive class because
Yeah.
you're applying one hot at a time, and I think like 3 blooms at a time. So it's like going all in one or the other doesn't make much sense, because if the hots are doing more, but it's so slow to apply them due to your global cooldown being longer because you're not running any haste, it's like, are you really getting more healing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's hard to quantify some of these things.
Yeah.
No, I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Depending on the class, depending on the spec, there's always that comment about whether you should always be casting or like for Frost Mage, are you always trying to be casting something, or is it like move to the good position, cast, move to a good position, cast? Like, what's the balance there?
It's funny. I don't even think this is a spec or a class specific thing. I think it's more just like the meta of WoW and how good players have gotten. Is that you on any class always want to be pressing a global. You don't want any dead globals almost ever, unless you're intentionally holding it to maybe make some play. But it's like, I mean, we can use the chess thing again. Like, if every global is moving a piece and you're holding a couple globals to do something or flashy or just moving around without pressing it, you're not being as efficient because other people are getting more moves in. So it's like, there's always a button you want to be pressing for sure. Whether it's if you need to move to position differently, what are the globals you can use on the move? Maybe you could drop your mirror images. Maybe there's a thing you can spell steal. Maybe there's it would be a good global to reapply your barrier. There's always some kind of button you can be pressing. But
Okay.
thankfully, since you have Shimmer, a lot of the times you'll be casting and moving around the map at the same time, which is the spell that allows you to start a cast over here and blink while you're casting it, which is definitely nice because you can definitely accomplish two things at once, moving and casting.
Yeah.
Speaking of Shimmer, I have a question. Are we in a blink backwards or blink forwards meta right now for Frost Mage in solo shuffle?
During your veins, you are definitely blinking backwards because you want to range any potential stops that could happen to you, because you want to be spamming as many frostbolts from as far as you can on the closest target that you can. Just during veins, frostbolt, doesn't matter who, just keep pressing them and just keep shattering them. That is, of course, if you can. Outside of veins, it's actually up for it kind of depends on the momentum, like who has momentum at the time. But you do want to be blinking on top of people to land snowdrifts as well. I would also say to that question, it relies a little bit on what you're playing. I think
Right.
if you're
Yeah.
playing with Feral or Rogue and they stun the healer for you, that would be a blink forward and try to land some kind of Ring of Frost or a Sheep or something.
Makes sense.
Sweet.
It's a nice mix. I've always said that's the hardest part of Mage, is knowing like how to balance CC and damage, or how to balance dampening people versus like playing to win is how I would word it.
And one thing, just to again cover some of the basics that we didn't go over yet. I mean, I'm assuming we probably know the answer to this question, but what are the best ratios right now for Mage?
It's a good question because Rachel's actually just got buffed, so I've been receiving it more and more. Night Elf is undoubtedly the best racial that you can play. However, it's a racial that also requires you to actively use Shadow Meld in an effective way. So I think the argument that Shadow Meld is OP has been around for as long as we can remember. The reason I think it's really good on Mage is because Mage is a very like elusive class. It's not necessarily tanky. If you are taking damage, you are dying pretty quickly on a Mage, but how you're avoiding it most of the time is through being elusive with your mobility, being far away from people, using mobility early so people can't touch you. And Meld really helps you do that a lot better, because if someone lands a big cast on you, for one, you can't just blink away from that, but you can meld it. Or, using it to avoid certain CCs so that you can stay in the game longer. Very diverse. It is not passive, though, so it does require some understanding of how it works on the player. I always recommend newer players to play Orc, because Orc is also probably up there in terms of racials, just due to, for one, you get the Blood Fury, right? It's a passive intellect increase. Macro it in with your veins, call it a day. More damage. But the Orc racial is also very strong for newer players, because I think Shimmer is a difficult ability to get used to, and a lot of players might not opt to take it and run Blink Stun because they're like, I guess I just get stunned all the time. Like, why don't you just play Blink Stun? And Orc kind of helps you adapt to Shimmer a little easier too. Makes it a bit less punishing since you sit less duration on the stuns. And then if you wanted to throw in a funky one, I think Torn is kind of fun, because the little War Stomp, you get a stun on the mage. But it's definitely not a one. I think Cubsy he's an advocate of the Torrent as well.
Yes.
What about do you like Void Elf at all?
Void Elf is a tricky one for me because it plays a role for Mage that Mage already does really well, which is mobility. And then it of course does have the no spell pushback, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't ever personally noticed spell pushback being too annoying for me nowadays anymore. Icy Veins also prevents spell pushback,
Mhm.
so it seems a bit overlapping with what Mage is already good at. So I like to use racials to kind of fill a void in my class where I feel like it's something I don't have already. So Void Elf for me has felt a little redundant.
Void Elf doesn't fill the void. It unfortunately.
In my opinion, Hansel plays Void Elf and he makes it look really cool and makes it work. So it's definitely not that you can't play it. It's just I feel like there are better options, at least in a competitive environment.
I'm looking at the Void Elf racials. You have 50% reduced cost on transmog. That's pretty big. You know, that might be
That-
worth it right there.
Yeah, you could play that just for that. That could be good.
That's funny.
Uh,
I was always enticed
yeah.
by Troll because of the mini lust with Mage.
That thing has been
It's
nerfed like a million times.
Yeah.
it would be good if it wasn't a 3-minute cooldown, I think.
Yeah.
If it was 2 and lined up with Veins, it would be maybe a bit better.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and I think at one point it was 20% casting speed, which was pretty crazy. I think when it was 20%, oof, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was.
That's
But
what Veins is.
It felt good.
yeah,
It felt really good. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that would be insane right now. Jeez.
So one thing we'd like to ask are some general, strategy things, some meta things for Frost Mage, and so right now, I mean, Frost Mage seems like it might be okay in 2v2. I can see it being kind of rough right now with how good BM hunters are in twos, but what do you think is the best 2v2 comp for Frost Mage?
It's definitely Frost Mage healer. So when it comes to what healer you can play with, I think there is like 3 main healers that you can do well with, all having different strengths. I don't think there's one that necessarily stands out as being the best. But I think Frost Mage with HPAL, Disc Priest, or Prez Evoker is the best. The Prez Evoker one, in my opinion, is the most fun because you can actually end games quicker than the other two, just due to the extra range sleep from the dragon, and also evokers can do a lot
Big
of damage.
damage.
Yeah. HPAL Mage, if I had to actually pick one as being the best, I would probably pick this one because when you're playing twos as a mage, you don't have a Mortal Strike, and you don't really have a way to lock down a target. You have Snowdrift, but it requires you to sacrifice positioning, meaning you'll take more damage to do it as well. So I found that the best strat for winning as mage healer in twos most of the time is to just play for dampening, take as less damage as possible, and just really prolong the game as long as you can. Because I don't think you'll win a war of attrition just due to not having that Mortal Strike effect. Which sounds counterintuitive because it's like, wait, you won't win the long game, but you are gonna play for the long game. But by doing that, you're taking less damage too. So you finally wait to a point to where dampening is high enough that one of your veins windows will kill them.
Okay.
And then the other one, I believe, yeah, hopefully, yeah. Eventually, dampening will be high enough that the Frostbolt spam will just kill them.
Or
And
you
then
die.
Disc Priest is another good one. I would maybe rank it as the worst of the 3, but it is very fun as well because you get PI. And Disc Priest can play the Void Weaver build, which also does a lot of damage. But
Yep.
the thing I've struggled with this comp is that the Disc Priest isn't as mobile as the Prez or the HPAL. So sometimes they can be a victim of just getting trained the whole game, and it's like they're gonna a lot quicker than the other two.
Feels bad, man.
Yep.
And then 3v3, I assume what FMP is still probably really good. Rogue Mage is still probably really good. Are you playing with outlaw rogues now or still sub rogues?
Definitely not. I mean, I think sub Frost does work, but it definitely doesn't feel as good since they took away the cooldown reduction on Vanish for sub rogues. So sub rogue has become way less obnoxious, I'd say. Now outlaw rogue is the most obnoxious. And the way I mean that is like they have the most control.
Oh, you don't have to just Outlaw Rogue is annoying. Like its whole purpose is just to annoy you. I swear to God, like it just
Yeah, and you can see how it turned out that way because Outlaw Rogue still has cooldown reduction on Vanish by spending combo points. So Sub Rogue is locked in to a certain cooldown on Vanish, and then that's it. Like they do have the Shadow Dance, but without the cooldown reduction, and the reduced reduction on Shadow Dance has been nerfed several times. So you find yourself pretty starved on that class nowadays. So Outlaw Rogue it just feels like it constantly has tools to set up your mage every 20 seconds, and that's why we've been playing more with Outlaw. And yeah, I think Priest or Paladin fits best there. I want to say for RMP, you definitely want to rock the Priest still. But for FMP, which I believe is a little bit stronger, maybe not, I don't know. But it's pretty close. The FMP stands as my favorite comp in 3v3, definitely. It, in my opinion, gives you the easiest perspective on Mage. Because you have a Paladin with Repentance that has no cooldown, and you have a Feral casting Clone that has no cooldown. And these classes both have lots of stuns. Well, Paladin has Hodge, Feral has Rake, Bash, Maim. So you have two teammates that are controlling the game for you and also casting the CC for you. So it really enables you to be that OP caster role and just sit back and only focus on your damage, essentially. Because
Feral's kind of funny right now. It's like its whole purpose is like eat kicks first for its wizard.
Yeah, that is the best part about playing with a Feral over a rogue, is that when you're playing RMP, the only other person on your team to kick is the priest, and he's likely in the back lines. So with FM Pal, you have these two other people just consistently eating kicks for you. And if you are the one eating the kick, it's like the clones are going to go crazy, the reps are going to go crazy.
Yeah, and I know there's that entire Double Dragon Feral comp that's sort of built around, okay, one of you is going to get kicked, and the other two are just going to own the entire game. Like, it's impossible to stop all three.
Well, it's funny
Feels
you mentioned because I was thinking about that. What about Preservation Evoker with Feral Mage?
Yeah, Prez is really fun for me to queue with. I have one of my friends he's like one of the best Prez evokers. It's very fun to queue with him. It does feel like there's a little bit of anti-synergy sometimes between Mage and Evoker, because if you're playing melee ranged Prez, Mage wants to sit in the back 40 yards away, Feral or Rogue is in the fight.
Yeah.
The healer has to kind of sit in the middle and can't necessarily get like the AoE. Like it just feels weird for the Evoker to heal two people who are far away from each other. But it is very fun. Yeah.
Prez wants everyone to press W, like in the arena. Like if everyone's pressing W, Prez is owning. Like they're doing crazy damage, they're doing crazy healing. Yeah, it gets sort of weird when people are just in different places.
Yeah, fair.
Now, I don't know. Have you played any BG Blitz or anything this expansion?
About 100 games. I think I'm sitting like just under 2,400.
Well done.
I haven't definitely not spammed it by any means. Haven't pushed like super crazy. I just been queuing with a couple viewers, couple IRL friends. It is pretty fun. I guess maybe I don't find BGs as fulfilling as arenas, so it's not like an innate desire to want to queue them. But it is a fun way to kill the time, and I've been learning more about how to succeed in them as well, because it's kind of a new environment for me.
I heard Ice Ball is really, really good in BG Blitz. Like you can do some really good things with that ability, right?
Yes, there was actually, I believe it to be a bug, where you could cast the ice wall in the center of your character, and your character would be stuck in the middle, and you would do this on top of a flag, and nobody could hit you inside of the wall, so you could just
oh my gosh,
cap the flag. I think that's been fixed, but the more like practical uses are definitely just like blocking people off so that either you or your teammate can cap the flag during like a big fight that otherwise would never end. So it's definitely a strong ability.
Yeah, cool. I can see that. Especially things like Eye of the Storm and in different places, that would be yeah.
places that have very narrow things that you can actually block off the whole thing is
Yep.
the best case for sure.
And now going back to solo shuffle, if you could give one piece of advice, like what is the most important thing that Frost Mages should focus on, or what do they tend to overlook that can actually win them more games in solo shuffle?
It's funny because it's always changing. I feel like previously at the start of the expansion, I would always say like, don't focus too much on CC. Every VOD I would watch from my coaching clients would be like they would be pressing polymorph way too much, and instead of now their damage on their details and momentum in the game is extremely low just from tunnel visioning that. So I would say probably that. I think a lot of mages are kind of in the mindset that they're a control class and should be trying to spam polymorph and control people, but really I feel like the higher win rate, the more damage you do, the higher your win rate will be. And look for the key ice walls as well.
There you go.
So hold on. So is solo shuffle you're not trying to CC? Like, am I understand that correctly? Like, I'm assuming you're still trying to CC, but just not like that's not the only goal. Like you focus more on damage.
Yeah, I always say that there's like well, previously I'd always said that this is also the hardest part of Mage is understanding the times where you should be doing that and the times where you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I would say if I had to give like a percent split, I would say like 90% of the time you're doing damage and like 10% of the time you're getting CC when it's readily available to you. Like you don't want to overstep to get it. It's just like, oh, somehow the healer is in the open right there and he's not on DR. I'll sheep him. It's not like,
Okay.
okay, I'm gonna blink in and fake this guy's kick and get precog and get the sheep, but he's gonna pre-sack, so I'm gonna. It's like it's never like that. It's just like when it's really right in your face, you can do it. Otherwise, it's build a lot of momentum with your damage, get to the point where the healer kind of runs out of healing and it's forced to cast, and then it's like a blink CS most of the time or an ice wall or something.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that distinction because I have a feeling people heard that and are like, oh, I just damaged, right? And then it's like, no, you need to.
Yeah, I would say like a 90-10 split is what I kind of go into it with.
I think the TLDR is you play safe. You
Yeah.
don't take risks you don't have to take to try
Take
to.
less damage, do more. The
Yeah.
reason you're running Shimmer is because it's off global. So if a guy's casting, you can off global blink CS him, and then it's like, yeah, that
Yeah.
And
is how
then
you should go about
Don't
it.
put yourself in a bad position just trying to get that thick play.
Mm-hmm.
and now on the flip side, if you had to give people playing against Frost Mages one piece of advice, what would that be for countering Frost Mages, or what sort of traps would you tell people to avoid against Frost Mages?
I would like to give two.
Sure.
The first one would be during Veins, be as disruptive as you can. Kick Frostfire Bolt. If you minimize the amount of Frostfire Bolts that the mage gets off during Veins, you really just increase your chance of winning. The second one would be for melee players who I hear this quite often that Frost Mage is untouchable. And it would come down to while Frost Mage does have more mobility than most melee classes can keep up with, make sure you're trading your mobility 1-for-1. So if a mage trades one ability, one shimmer, just make sure you're trying to maybe close the distance without using your own, for example. If there's some kind of way that you can close the distance without committing a charge of whatever your main mobility is,
Yes.
always be looking for that type of play so that you can actually
You want to be the person. You want to be the person acting second. You don't want to act first when it comes to mobility, right? Like the way you win the mobility trades are to always be reacting. It's really funny, like when you see like a warrior complaining about, oh, I can't touch this Frost Mage, and the very like first global of their game will be
Discharge.
like, yeah, heroic leap
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, there's your problem. Like,
Mhm.
you're gonna be behind.
I will say that Frost Mage is pretty annoying with Frostbite. Sometimes that
Oh
you
yeah.
can do everything right and you'll press charge and then you'll get Frostbite on it, and it's like, well, what could you have really done about that?
Yes. Garrison, do you want ask the iconic
The
question?
ultimate question.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just reading something in chat, but I think we're out of time, so we'll move in. The ultimate question, the question we like to ask everybody. So scenario, you're with Ian Hazacostas, the whole dev team, regardless of cost, regardless of how ridiculous, one thing you can change, they'll make it happen. What's one thing you want to
Ooh.
change about World of Warcraft?
Oh, about World of Warcraft,
Sure.
like as a whole.
Yeah. Anything and everything. You can, but only one thing.
Oh man, I thought it was gonna be just like Mage. Like one thing I would
We
change
change
about
it up
Mage.
sometimes. Sometimes it is. Sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, you can make it just about Mage if you want.
I already had a Mage answer. Oh, when it comes to actual WoW, I don't know. I'd need to think about that. Maybe I'll think about that while I'm explaining the Mage one. But
Oh, you're only
I
allowed one
would.
though. That's
Oh, Rick. Okay, I'll go with the Mage one because this one
okay.
is actually something that I think is extremely important.
Sure.
Um, I think a lot of the casted CCs in the game are very similar now. So
Yep.
like, Cyclone has increased range, and it's arguably the strongest casted CC because it doesn't delete the debuffs from the target, stops healing, stops. Uh, it's just kind of pauses everything. But the debuffs obviously keep ticking. And then Fear is strong because it doesn't clear debuffs and doesn't necessarily break to 1 damage. It kind of just moves them away from you, and they kind of keep taking damage up to a certain threshold. And it's the same duration as Polymorph, and Polymorph has glaring negative side effects to it, like removing all debuffs, healing the target if you're not playing Shepherd, and the biggest downside of it is that it breaks to 1 damage, just a singular damage. I, to me, that's a small issue just because it lasts the same duration, and it's so easily broken in a game environment where every spell at this point in the War Within is an AoE spell. And I guess if I had to change it, I would make it to where AoE spells cannot target the target that's in a polymorph. This would not make it so annoying to where the duration of it was increased. I don't think longer CC would be received well by the community. But I think it would make Polymorph actually a lot stronger and worth going for instead of that whole 10% CC playstyle, just play back and do damage. Polymorph is an iconic spell of the Mage's kit that is seeing very little use currently.
Yeah.
So to make it maybe more a bit dated instead of outdated, if it didn't break to AoE spells and only just direct damage, I think it could definitely be a good spell again.
Interesting. Just out of curiosity, because I know I've heard a number of times we talked to people, and they aren't doing hard casted CC because of all the micro CC and avoidance of you can get kicked on a hard casted CC versus some of these instant or low cast time micros and that is poly being casted less because it breaks easily to CC, or is it being casted, or it breaks easily to other damage, or is it being casted less because cast time avoidance of you can get kicked and get locked out on certain schools, and then or is it that other stuff too? I'm just kind of curious.
It's
I'm
a
not,
bit
I'm not
of
trying to challenge your
both.
idea. I just want to make sure on this one.
No, it's a good question. I would say it's a bit of both because it is a risk reward to push in an attempt to land CC
Mm-hmm.
because you're opening up your arcane school, which is your most important. So if you get interrupted on that, you're going to take a lot of damage, and there's no way that you can really avoid it when you're locked on arcane. But it's also like I think the risk reward doesn't exactly match the risk. So it's like you're landing a sheep that will most likely break, and it doesn't feel like you're really being rewarded for pushing in and playing aggressively like that to land those CCs.
Yeah. No, fair.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate
I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, I think it does. I think it acknowledges the fact that Poly's not being casted for multiple reasons, not just avoidance of it breaking to other damage, but
Yeah,
I think we avoid that
you would
one
just
part.
put it on.
Yeah.
You would just put it on DR at that point. Like if you
Yeah.
cast it and then it breaks instantly, it's like the hunter you're playing with is like, dude, you just DR'd my diamond ice trap that doesn't have a chance to break or something.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you even doing, dude? No.
Yeah.
I can hear the chat right now. It's big.
Oh, the solo shuffle chat.
Yeah. Big. Do you have one?
I got a Mimi answer this time.
Oh.
You know those levers they put in solo shuffle that people are supposed to pull to start the game? I have not ever had that work. I've never seen that work since they've implemented that. I want to see that work at least one time. That's my goal. I wish people would start pulling those levers because
A weird part about the levers is that whenever they're all pulled, I've seen it done in a twos match, but it still puts you on a 10-second. It just moves the timer down to 10 seconds. It doesn't even open the gates instantly.
Yeah.
So people are gonna decide what they want to do for the first 30 seconds of the thing, and then they pull the lever, and it's like you're really only deleting maybe 20 seconds of starting room time from it. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there needs to be something on the screen like the other team is ready instead of just at the top it says like 2 out of 4 players. It's like
it should have a chance to give you gold or something. If you pull it, it should be like a slot machine. It just
there you
then
go.
people would pull it every time.
Be
100%.
incentivized to pull it. Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, a randomized buff.
Yes.
like-
10% more damage.
Berserker. Bing, 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 bing.
Garrison, what do you change?
So this one's going to sound a little bit weird, but I was thinking of this, and I think it has some excellent game potential. Is I would have them put a talent. I'm not sure if it'd be PvP or in the Frost tree, where if you take this talent, you can no longer use ice block on yourself, but you can use it on any player, enemy or friendly, in an arena in rated PvP. So
That
you
could
could
be
save a
nasty.
friend. You could lock out a healer low or lock out a DPS low or something like that.
Kind of like time stop almost.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
But the
Yeah,
fun part
there's-
is then the enemy,
Yeah.
so let's say you're playing against, let's say, a warrior mage, right? And you ice block their healer. The warrior could actually choose to shattering throw his healer. Or not.
And you would be blocking the healer there just so he couldn't heal, yeah? Like
Yeah.
those teammates. Yeah.
They should
There we
bring
go,
back that.
instant CC.
They should bring back that thing from WoD where you could play with the thing that replaced Ice Block, where you got 3 seconds of immunity or something every minute. I don't.
Evanesce.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was I honestly like that talent. That was a fun talent to play.
I thought it was
Um,
fun as well because it gave you it's a fun trade-off to make when you have to pick between being tanky or being more offensive. So you could not take ice block in the name of being able to make aggressive plays, which is definitely a play style that I feel like is not found today in most scenarios. So yeah, I would enjoy that as well.
Yes. Bring back Evanesce. We need that.
Could be a choice node with ice block. It is a talent, I believe.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Blizzard.
Yeah, hopefully they listen. I don't even know if they listen or not, but I'm told they listen to podcasts. We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. All right. Hopefully it's just not the people in the mailroom. That's no offense to the people in the mailroom. You're awesome. You know what I mean. All right. Let's get into the WoW PvP news and roll this out.
All right! Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
All right. So in the PvP news, if anybody follows the esports scene, Group A of the Mythic Dungeon International finished last weekend on the 3rd. Huge congrats to Perplexed for taking first place on that, and a solid nod to Team Polish Mountain for coming in second after they dropped in the lower bracket day 1 and then fought their way all the way back up to the grand finals, only to very, very close finish. So If anybody is big into dungeon running in that, that was a really good weekend. I highly recommend. If you didn't watch it, go check it out. I understood there was actually a little bit of drama. Apparently, somehow one of the observers died on one of the team, and then that counted as a death time, as a death miss, or as a death count, which made the team they actually lost the match, or that matchup, because they had the extra. I can't remember how much time they're at. They actually changed the rules this time. It was like more time added per death. So instead of, I think it was 5 seconds originally, now it's like almost a minute per death or something. Like it's significant. So anyway, highly recommend checking it out. Big, did you catch Flark's 3v3 solo tournament that he ran there on? Oh shoot, I think it was last weekend as well.
I did not, but I saw that a few people were streaming it.
Yeah.
Looks like we had a interesting comp win. Was it? Oh, it was solo queue. So was it random teams?
Yes, well, almost. So what happens is that people join up by themselves, and then he runs an algorithm that checks their PvP experience, or whatever their CR is, and then balances out to try to create even teams. So you can
Gotcha.
be a 2400 player with an 18 and a 1600, or you can be like a 2K player with a 2.1 and a 1900.
I see.
That sounds interesting, because if you're like a 3500 rated player, then you'll almost always get like the 1100 player,
Yeah,
right?
that's kind of that's
Which,
kind of how it happens.
yeah,
It should.
which I mean, it could, yeah, it sounds like an interesting. It would be an interesting outcome.
And
Yeah.
it looks like the winner was playing Shadow Priest, Devastation Evoker, Holy Paladin. That sounds like a lot of damage comp. Like someone's getting blasted on the
Yeah.
enemy team.
They steamrolled
No
a
So
few
strike
people.
comp.
It was.
yeah, that's a solo shuffle lobby. Yeah. Um, Looks like we also had some hot fixes. Of course, the patch has been quite buggy, multiple bugs. So, I'm sure we'll probably get more hot fixes as time goes on. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you have many reports of players getting DC'd and losing CR. That actually happened to me after a night of tanking. I
No.
DC'd and I was in the I was in shambles. It was felt really bad. Like I was like, oh no, like it was insult to injury. But I got all my rating back. Thank God.
You're
It took
lucky.
yeah. I mean, it took 2 queue sessions, but I did it. I'm now
See,
the top 10 druid on the ladder. I'm happy.
well done. See, but
Thank you.
for Battleground Blitz, that feels real bad because it's minus 200. Like, is it minus 200 for Arena as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or is it
Oof.
150? I don't remember. I don't know.
That happened
But
to my duo. He was in Florida and he got DC to the hurricane, and he lost
Oh.
150 CR, and it was like, I mean, the way you climb blitz is
It's
at
like
most 20 CR at a time, so it was
yeah.
not an easy recovery if that happens to you.
I saw a screenshot recently too of someone losing a BG Blitz and they lost like 700 MMR or something, like from a
Oof.
single loss. Like something's gone wrong with rating in BG Blitz. It seems like something's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Speaking
all
of
over the
BG
place.
Blitz, apparently the PvP forums are not being moderated as well as they should be, and there's a group of players who have taken over and are on a constant crusade against so-called boosters and BG Blitz or Q manipulators. I've seen the posts. I've seen the parodies of the posts. It's all quite crazy. Very weird.
So,
I would, yeah.
do you guys think that it's actually happening though? Do you think there's actually like Q manipulations and people that are trying to boost? Like, I'm sure people are dual queuing and carrying somebody for some CR, but like, do you think that is actually like where like a whole match or matches repeatedly are being Q manipulated like that?
I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's hard to say. It's likely not happening, in my opinion, just because it's from what I've heard from the higher rated blitz players, is that the high rated lobbies are only from like 1 a.m. to like 3 a.m. or something. So it's
Huh.
like not even that many players that are extremely high rated in Blitz are even really playing it. At least not on their mains. But I suppose it's also possible, like you said, to have the high rated player duo queue with the lower rated guy and get him up. That's most likely happening, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt there's some like massively organized cartel,
Agreed.
operating in the
Yeah.
background. Like that. If I know one thing about gamers, is that they're pretty lazy. No offense, gamers. Like, that'd be quite impressive.
I feel personally attacked. Thanks, Big.
Yes, good. It looks like there's also been cross-faction queues implemented for unrated PvP coming soon. It
Yep.
looks like.
Yeah,
So
11.0.7.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And then let's see, Warcraft 2 Remastered was possibly leaked, and we have a tweet from MMO Champion about that.
Yeah, so
And
it looks like that was for a Warcraft Rumble release, but then when
rest
they
in
did it,
peace.
apparently they put some of the wrong graphics and it indicated a Warcraft 2 remastered. So
Yeah,
who knows?
gotcha. Then there's also been some bugs with currency transfers
Yeah,
for the warband system, which I actually have never used before,
really.
if I'm being honest. Yes.
All right.
I don't have any alts.
Well,
So
that helps.
yeah.
I've used it a bit, but apparently, if you were in raid and you went to currency transfer while you were in the raid, you like caused some massive lag for the whole raid, and like
Oh, nice.
it bugged out really bad. So they shut it down just during the weekend. Looks like it's working now with the reset, so maybe they've improved it. I don't know, but in the meantime, if you want to save yourself a little bit of pain, uh, just don't like if you're in a raid. Why are you currency transferring anyways? Like I can't imagine why this is happening. Like why would you even need to do that? But
Yeah,
mm, I don't know.
that's so funny. Yeah. It's like, why? What are you doing?
Yeah. Like, do you really need that? Are you really that low on gold that you need to transfer more gold over to your character just so you could repair yourself? Maybe I don't know, but whatever. Yeah. So that's pretty much what we have for news. Over to you first, Agus. Shout outs. Is there anybody, maybe teammates or some listeners that you want to shout out before we roll this out?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I could shout out to all the people who support my channels every day. We just hit like 1,000 subs on the Twitch, so anyone who is contributing to that, shout out to those guys.
Congrats.
And same with the YouTube channel as well. So anyone who plays Mage or is listening right now, shout out to you as well. Obviously, people who don't play Mage as well, but Mage players, Mage players got to stick together. But kind of all I got in terms of that.
That's awesome. I love it. And Big, anybody you want to shout out?
Shout out to Zenlin for getting world first 2400 Holy Priest. That's a pretty
Wow, that
impressive
is impressive.
feat. Yeah, and if
Yeah.
it's actually really crazy if you go watch like the lobbies, his games. I mean, man, it's very stressful to be a Holy Priest right now. I'll just say that. Like you have to plant your feet and heal. If you get kicked, well, that's game over. It's pretty impressive. So
Perfection
Zenlin,
is the minimum requirement.
yes, all it takes is playing 100% perfect, and you can get 2400 on a Holy Priest
Yep.
right now. Garrethar, what about you?
Great question. I think I'm just going to give a quick shout out to everybody that listens to our show and comes to comes to the Discord and interacts. Love y'all. Love the conversations that we have not only during the show but all the things that we do between shows. You guys really make this worthwhile doing. So thank you so much. Love you.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun. Like this is a good experience for me. So thank you for
Thanks.
having me as well.
Appreciate you being here, man. This is
Thank you.
Hey, it took us about 6 months, I think, to find a time that worked out. it was something.
I was a bit nervous, I guess, a bit shy.
It's fine. not the only person. I remember that I was shy the first time trying to do this, so it's all good. But it's not about me actually right now. It's about you, Agus. Where can our listeners find you on the interwebs if they want to watch you stream, watch your YouTube channels? You have a Discord too, right?
I do have a Discord. Yeah, we just had 12K members, I believe. That's Egg Cord. You can find the link in a variety of different places. I'd say maybe the easiest one would be the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Agus. We're live 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, usually starting around 4 p.m. And I also upload 3 to 4 videos a week on YouTube. Same handle, Agus. Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you guys go and check those out.
Appreciate it. And I just realized, thank you so much for taking a break in your streaming to join us for this, because we're like right.
Yeah,
back
it's
at
no
it while
problem.
you're-
I thought it would be fun because it's a new experience, and I'm always open to that kind of thing.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate. Big.
Yeah, of course, man.
Do you want to tell the listeners where they can find us aside from here live listening to our voices?
Oh, I can do that. You can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Bonus Roll Productions Discord. Also, you can visit the Bonus Roll website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at bonusroll.gg. This directory also has a review system, so head over there and give us some 5-star reviews. Or be honest and roast us. But in any case, let us know what you think about our show and any other favorite show of yours.
I love it. Absolutely. And links for everything that we've talked about are going to be in the show notes. We want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll chat with you next time. Good night, everybody.
Peace.